Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the 3 Gun Show, episode 94. I'm your host, Dave Harmon, coming at you from Columbus, Ohio, on my way to Virginia International Raceway for the 3 Gun Nation Nationals. My guest this week on the podcast is former Marine and 3 Gun Nation Pro Series competitor, James Gill. You are going to love this one. James lives and breathes shooting, and he shares the story of how he overcame some serious injuries received on the battlefield by using practical shooting as his therapy, why you might be wasting ammo in your practice, and the one item that you absolutely need to make to get better at long-range rifle. As usual, if you have any comments or feedback, you can email me at dave@3gunshow.com or just comment on the episode at the website, which is 3gunshow.com/episode 94, or just, tap that album art on your smartphone and it will take you right there. And now please join me in welcoming the show, James Gill. James, welcome to the 3 Gun Show.
Dave, thanks for having me here.
I'm excited to have you, man. We got to meet in person finally at the Rocky Mountain 3 Gun this August, and what a beautiful setting for a first meeting as well.
Best place on the planet to hold a 3-gun match, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I got to watch a ton of great shooters over 4 days do their thing, and man, the setting there is just absolutely gorgeous. Natural terrain and things like that. And it just basically is like what you think of when you think of a natural terrain 3-gun match. Just a really gorgeous area.
Yeah, it definitely hits all the wickets there as far as being a place that you want to go vacation, a place that, no matter how bad you're shooting, it's an enjoyable place. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so you were running on the RO squad this year, right? So you got to shoot it early in just a couple days and then hang out for the rest?
Well, I've worked that match every year except 1 year, and I do that because Denise and JJ have been pretty open with us with the Marine team. So I normally shoot in advance with the ROs, and then I work the match. I'm one of the area captains. I float around and pick up score sheets, fix stuff, and bring people sandwiches, all that good stuff.
Nice. Yeah, the sandwich bringer is like the most popular guy on the range, of course.
Yeah. Usually I bring guys sandwiches and then I DQ somebody. So, I'm their best friend and their worst enemy at the same time.
Take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
Well, James, you mentioned the Marine team, and I want to get into that as well. I think it's a really exciting program that they're running. But I want to take it back pretty far here and talk about your beginning in 3-gun. But first, give us an idea of who you are off the range. What does James do when he's not shooting?
Well, a little background. I was born and raised here in San Antonio. Joined the Marine for high school. Spent about 11 years, I guess it was, in the Marine Corps, just over 11 years. I was severely injured back in 2006. Spent a few years in the hospital during rehab. And part of my rehab off the clock, I guess, was shooting. And that's where I got into competitive shooting. It was really the only thing that I could put any time and energy into. Therapy that just had me doing crunches all day. So that was a good release for me. And then it gave me something to really drive all my attention, gave me focus and purpose for what I was doing. So I stayed in the Marine Corps, ran the Marine Corps 3-gun team. And really outside of shooting, I guess it's all shooting. I mean, I hunt, a varmint hunt. Back home, I've got 6 kids with my wife, and that takes up a lot of time, which is good. Now that I'm retired, I can actually make sure to be at all the doctor's appointments, all the football games, choir practice. If the kids have it, I'm there. Unless I'm absolutely have to be on the road for an event. So that's really all I do is shoot, and then I'm home with the family.
Sounds like a pretty decent life.
It's not bad. One of these days I might have to grow up to be a real boy and get a real job, but for right now I'm enjoying what I do.
Well, and with 6 kids, I imagine there's always a choir practice or a soccer game or something like that as well.
Yeah, my wife and I were looking over the schedule, and I think just in a normal weekdays, we might have. I have a little more free time than she does. Her schedule, I think it's like Thursday. She gets 2 hours between picking up the kids, where she doesn't really have to be anywhere. But every other day of the week, she's got something going. So my schedule is a little more relaxed than that, but she's definitely tied up with it.
So you mentioned that in your service in the Marines that you were injured. For those that don't know you and are unfamiliar with you and your shooting and 3-gun, can you describe the injuries?
Yeah, so I was involved. The last injury that took me out of the fight, I guess, was a blast injury inside a hotel stairwell in Iraq in 2006. Initially, I lost my left eye and my right foot. The shrapnel wounds were actually through my ankle and my foot, and they had my foot kind of attached with this erector set until I got back to the United States, which was about 24 hours later or 36 hours later, something like that. There, they kind of told me, hey, we can repair your foot and you're walking on a brick forever, or we cut it off and you're walking again in 6 months. So we cut it off. And when they actually went to amputate, it was just, a fingernail's worth of skin on the left side and the right side of the ankle that was attached to the foot. So nothing really was attached at that point. And then later on, I had some other injuries in my shin that didn't heal. So I got a bone infection. So they actually had to go higher and do an emergency amputation up to about mid-shin. So missing a leg below the right knee. Pretty much everything from the hips down and shoulders down my arms and my face wasn't covered with body armor, so it got completely perforated with shrapnel. I mean, I'm still spitting out pieces of metal and cinder and all sorts of junk. Kind of classified me as, I guess, traumatic brain injury. I have a piece of shrapnel that's lodged behind my fake eye in my, the frontal lobe, my brain, right in that area. Don't know exactly where it is. So I took some pretty severe injuries, and under any circumstance, I'm pretty grateful to be here. And I think it's pretty unique that I'm not going to say unique because I know there's people in tougher situations, but I'm very grateful of my situation because I'm doing as well as I am.
Yeah, that sounds. That's an amazingly positive attitude to have when you just describe that list of injuries, and we're grateful to have you here too, still with us and contributing to the community like you do. So,
well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. So, when you were in rehab, you mentioned that you got into back into shooting, back into competition shooting, and it gave you something to concentrate on. How was that transition, and what made you head that direction?
Well, it wasn't necessarily getting back into competitive shooting because I hadn't shot anything competitively up to that point. I'd done a little bit of shooting in Boy Scouts, a little bit of plinking with the family, but nothing competitive-wise. And then throughout the Marine Corps, going through different shooting packages and formal training within the Marine Corps. So during my rehab, I was a rifleman by trade. I spent some time, very limited time, with a scout sniper platoon. But shooting was my craft, and I thought I was pretty good at it until I started going to the range, just taking whatever guns I had and, renting a bay and just shooting paper. One of the gentlemen there got me involved in a pistol league. Excuse me. And so with the pistol league, they had a stage set up. They'd run the stage for 1 week, and then they'd rotate it for a total of 7 weeks with the league. And since I didn't really have any place to be after therapy, I spent just about every day on the range there. And the gentleman there that was helping me, got me into the league shooting, and then he got me into USPSA, which, I can tell you the first time I went and shot USPSA, I was absolutely stacking rounds one on top of the other,
Yeah.
performing awesome reloads, everything textbook, but I was doing it like 9 minutes slower than I should have been. So then I started seeing other competitive shooters, and most of the guys that were there in the club, the majority of them were just weekend shooters. They didn't really have any experience, but they were all faster than me. They were all better at what they did than I was, and I desired to be better. I didn't like having, an old retired guy or a 12-year-old girl being able to beat me at something.
Hurt the ego a little bit, huh?
Oh, absolutely. So I started putting more and more time into that sport, I guess, and found a lot of support from people within the community, people that appreciated what I had done. In a two-part state, one, I was there working the matches every week. Monday through Friday I was on the range, and then Saturday and Sunday shooting whatever match I could get my hands on. And there was a couple of guys in the community that started dragging me out. Kevin Gentry, he's the team captain for Rudy Project. He kind of started showing me the ropes about how to game, and then got in with Benny Hill down at Triangle Shooting Sports out of Corpus. And those guys dragged me into 3-gun. And I guess the rest is history from there. But
so when you first went to the range, were you largely shooting pistols, or were you shooting? Did you get back into rifles as well?
I wasn't very good with pistols. I had a pistol at the time, I think. I had a shotgun mainly for hunting, but I bought an AR. That was, we are the generation of the AR-15. It's the American Service Rifle, so that was only natural that I followed that. And to be honest, I think the first AR I ever bought was, thinking back to 2006, I don't think there was a rifle out there that was $2,500. But I bought a rifle at a gun show that was $2,500. Come to find out now, it's probably worth $600. But
oh man,
yeah, just buying all the wrong stuff. I was a mall ninja, had all the cool tack lights and everything else on it.
Sweet.
Yeah, and it fit the profile of what I was used to carrying overseas.
Yeah. Well, you're coming from a different, sort of background. It's not like you're thinking, gamer when you're first picking up your first rifle then.
Yeah, so I didn't have anything with a game in mind, and it really took me a while to get adjusted to the game because, there was a bunch of people that were out there and they had these, $3,500 race pistols and some extremely phenomenal gear, but I wasn't in the world of Formula One. I was a duty guy, and at the time I thought that gaming was nonsense, so I kind of avoided going that route until I started learning the value of the different pieces of gear and, the mentality, hey, you can take a skill set and you should be able to translate it depending on the environment you're in pretty easily. There's certain things that you can't train. Obviously, if you have a competition handgun, there's certain things that you're not realistically going to be able to do with that handgun in a combat environment, but you should be able to take the skills that you've learned from that competition thing, and it just makes for a better mentality. So I appreciated that, and I started chasing this magic shooting discipline that I was trying to find out, well, where is the pinnacle of shooting? What is the fastest you can do stuff? And I don't think I've quite found it yet, but I've come pretty close, I think.
Nice.
in theory, there's a lot of science to it, and that's aside from pulling the trigger, the science behind shooting is what keeps me awake at night, and I think it does for a lot of people too. But putting a lot of time and energy into studying that, it's actually opened up more, I guess, training opportunities and more thought processes that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Before it was just see bad guy, point gun, and pull trigger, and there was a lot more to it than that. But some of it wasn't really relevant to me at the time. But so I've adapted, I guess.
So when you stay awake at night, what type of things do you think about?
Well, I think about the next match I can go to and how I can peak my performance for that match. There's a few guys out there on the circuit that I have yet to beat that I'm dying to beat. There's a few guys out there that have these larger than life personalities and names around them, and I'd like to jump into that crowd. Not necessarily, I do like attention, but not necessarily for that reason. I don't want to be a celebrity. I'd like to be more of a teacher, more of the informational guy, and I think there's a few guys out there that have that already. So that's kind of my drive and my desire, is trying to find really what is the best for shooting. I don't know, it's hard to put it into perspective is when you think about, do I just want to win a match? Well, I've won a couple of matches and I didn't feel very good about my shooting. So
Right.
I'm not after the win, I guess.
So it's more of like a qualitative thing than that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm striving for perfection, and
Right.
there's a few pieces of gear that people have come out with in the last 10, 20 years, I guess, that are these magic solutions to everything, and people think, oh, well, that's it. It's not getting any better, and then overnight somebody comes out with something else, and it just completely changes how stuff operates. Years ago, people thought, oh, well, for example, Steel Challenge. Oh, Steel Challenge, they've maxed out how fast they can shoot this, and it seems like every year guys cut the record, by a second here or 2 seconds there, and they're always getting faster with it. So, I think there's a bunch of people out there that can tell you that, in theory, Steel Challenge could be shot in this time. No one's done it yet, and that's what everybody's chasing. So, I don't personally shoot a whole lot of Steel Challenge. I've shot it for practice and stuff, but I am chasing that perfect score, I guess.
Huh. It's interesting you bring that up. I was watching back what do you call it, episode of Three Gun Nation recently, and one of the guys, I think it was Dan Horner, said in the 80s the guys were doing it as hard as they could and they thought they were going as fast as they possibly could. And in the 90s they were doing the same thing and they were going faster, and today we're going faster.
Yep.
So it's like everyone's always performing at their peak, but the next generation just finds a way to shave a little bit of time off and a little bit of time off.
Yeah, and I think there's still a lot to be done with that. Modern machinery has changed production of things. People are starting to read science and technologies. You have more and more shooters that aren't just trigger pullers. They are doctors and lawyers and some very intelligent people, and they take their training from whatever professional career they have, and they're starting to translate that into shooting. Instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to go shoot every weekend, now they're shooting all day, every day. And actually some of the better people aren't necessarily shooting that much at all. They're just, they've probably done their research and figured out what they need to do, and they're just executing correctly. So
nice. Executing. Yeah, the executing is always something I'm working on. It's like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to hit the targets, but it's the part in the middle that I usually struggle with.
A lot of people don't know this, but I think I'm like a 10-time world champion in theory. I just haven't executed any sort of championship title in real life. So,
well, I could definitely relate. I'm way better than I think I am too. Or no, wait, I think I'm. It doesn't matter. James, I want to take a step back to what you said at the beginning there when you said that shooting gave you something to concentrate on while you're doing your rehab. Couple things. One, what did you find that you need to accommodate yourself with your new injuries or your new prosthesis or however you want to say it? And then two, have you found that type of therapy works for other people as well? Have you talked to guys in a similar situation that have used that for therapy?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in reverse order because I think the second is the easier of the two.
Okay.
I know personally, getting back into something that, just touching a firearm in general, that was one of the things that the Marine Corps pulled me away from, whether it was because I was a liability or because there were safety issues or training concerns. I don't know what was there, but just getting back to a normal feeling where people allowed me to do something that I enjoyed was good. Now, I know there's a ton of great programs out there for not only wounded service members, but just people with disabilities in general. The shooting circuit, there's probably 24 guys that I know that are shooting with some sort of severe disability. Mm-hmm. And, we have to acknowledge that, for the general population, it is a disability. I don't consider my injuries to be a disability. I'm very abled, but it's just, it's just a little different circumstance. So taking guys out and letting them feel the enjoyment of being accepted into whatever group they're going to, that's huge. So whether it's shooting or kayaking or paper mache or whatever it is, guys need some sort of rehab with like-minded individuals, but definitely shooting because it's so much more fun, I think, and it's physically demanding. So, physical therapy all day because it strengthened my core stability so that I wouldn't wobble on a prosthetic. I didn't realize the value of that until I tried to lean around a barricade as I'm shooting. So yes, it is very helpful not only for myself but other guys out there. And there are specific wounded warrior groups or injured service member, injured personnel, injured whatever you want to call them, groups that cater to people with handicaps. So that's that. And as far as how I adapted to it, the first obvious one is I'm missing a leg. So anytime I take a step, I bounce my sights. So I've had to adjust the timing of my shots based on how I'm running around on a stage, and either time between the shots or know that I'm going to bounce the gun. So I have to accommodate that. And there was a guy that I actually trained with. He was one of the first shooters that started teaching me about timing, as far as how long something took on a stage, how long the gun went off, and shot splits and everything else. For the first 6 or 8 months that I shot with him, he didn't know I was missing a leg because I'd always wear pants. And the first time I got to the range in shorts, after months of him telling me, oh, you need to do this, this, and this, and I kept telling him, Jamie, I can't do that. He saw that I was missing a leg and was like, oh, when did that happen? I'm like, 2 years ago, man. So, there's definitely been some adjustments with the physical ability of the leg. Big thing is I can't sprint as fast. I don't have as long endurance because not necessarily endurance, because I can run for a long time without getting tired. It's just a matter of my prosthetic doesn't handle it. It breaks suction and starts falling off and everything else. So a lot of the agility type movements on a stage of fire, I'm at a disadvantage. So I have to figure out how to maximize the time there. And then the vision, I didn't realize how much my vision would impact me. So I've had to redevelop how I shoot targets. I don't have any depth perception, so I have to gauge targets based on size. Obviously, with any handgun target, it's just for me, it's just a small target or a large target, and that determines how much time I'm going to spend shooting at it or aiming at it anyway. And obviously, the long range rifle and everything else like that, I just range it with my rangefinder. But I have run into a bunch of walls and doors on my left side. It happens quite a bit because I don't have the peripheral vision over there. And in some cases, it actually helps me. I can actually see better at night. It's kind of thermal vision there. I'm just kidding. No, but the vision where some people worry about getting blurred vision or double vision. I don't have those problems. It limits me on certain things, but it kind of makes it a little bit easier on certain things with shooting. So,
do you find target transitions are more difficult, or I mean, how do you? So it's your left eye. How do you transition to your left then when you're shooting? Do you have to, turn your head more than you normally would?
I don't necessarily turn my head if I'm transitioning to the left. I look at it in stage planning. If I went into a stage as a blind course of fire and just had to react, head on a swivel type environment,
Right.
I might be at a little more of a disadvantage. But when everybody gets to go through and plan their stage out, I just plan the way I'm going to engage targets to my strong suit. Obviously, we read left to right, so I want to engage targets left to right. The gun works for me that way anyway. Excuse me.
Gotcha.
But as far as engaging targets, it does make it a little more difficult, but I've got a very good system for planning stages where I'm transitioning to a target without looking at it, and not blind fire, but I'm just driving the gun to where I know it's going to be. My eye catches up to the sight. As soon as the sight breaks across the target, I'm breaking my shot. So, I mean, it's really no different than what any other shooter's doing. I just have to be a little sharper with my focus as far as getting, my eyes to my sights in the transition. So a little bit more difficult, but, I'm not losing a whole lot of ground on a stage of fire that way.
Right. Now, when you do your stage plan, are you like super cognizant of things that are coming from if you're moving to the left, are you like, okay, there's a wall there's a fault line there, things like that?
Absolutely. If I have to run and plant, I will always try and do it on the left side if it's a matter of going left or right first. If I'm going to have a hard plant, I always want to do it on my left leg. And same thing with exiting a position. I always try and make sure that I get in a position where I can exit the box using my left leg to push, because my right leg is just kind of it's a stump basically with a prosthetic, so I don't have that flex in the calf or the ankle to help push out of the box. So that will kind of dictate which way I plan to go. But most of the time, it's still left to right anyway. So, a lot of people think about how they're moving in a box just because of which way they're going to do their reload, and they don't want to have to break the 180. I do the same thing with how I'm going to plant my prosthetic. It's just, most people are just worried about their muzzle. I'm worried about leg and muzzle. So it kind of goes at the same time. So it's not a huge disadvantage.
So then when you're shooting on the move, do you pretty much only break shots on your left leg then when you're planted with your left side?
I used to only plant shots as I was pivoting off the left foot. My right foot would be in the air, and I'd break cadence. And I've learned that I have a better ability with my pistol specifically, which is where it used to hurt the most. So now I've done some adjustments with prosthetics where I've got a little bit softer prosthetics, so it's a little more flexible and softer when I'm planning. It's just something I have to be conscious of. And shooting on the move for me over the last few years has been one of the hardest things to do. And I've spent the most of my training time on that specific thing. I work on plyometrics and then shooting on the move, and not necessarily trying to shoot while moving as fast as possible, because it's not very realistic. And if I can absolutely sprint by a target, then it's probably not a very difficult target. So I'm not too worried about it. But, when you get to the 12 to 18 yard range of pistol, steel, and paper, where you're trying to shoot on the move, for pistol, I'm probably going to shoot it a little slower and just make sure I'm faster on the trigger, so I'm not spending a whole lot of time bouncing up and down.
Okay, so this is probably a super ignorant question, but I'm ignorant on the topic. So, do you have like a special prosthesis that you use on range day? Like normal people have different shoes they wear?
I have a couple different legs. I have one running leg, which I don't wear very often, but that one, it looks like a giant bent paper clip. And the other one that I have is my normal, it's just an everyday multi-purpose leg. It's kind of a hybrid leg where it's a mix of a running leg and a straight pylon. So, your normal walking leg will be a foot. The mechanics of a foot is just a carbon fiber. It almost looks like a ruler with a slight curve in it with a rubber shoe mold over it. And then a titanium pylon going up to your socket, and that's it. The hybrid has a small flexible loop at the bottom, like a running leg, and then a pylon. So it's flexible and I can run with it, but it still is strong enough and supportive enough where I can walk on it and stand on it without it really sagging like a running leg would.
And so that's what you use every day and what you use in matches as well?
Yep, and I've developed this leg with the Wounded Warrior medical system and the VA over the last couple of years. There's a bunch of guys using different legs out there, and I've tried to go for as light as possible a leg, and they're not always comfortable. I mean, every match I come home from, usually the first day after the match, I'm rehabbing my leg anyway, so I know I'm going to tear it up. I just try and make it as little as possible, the damage I cause.
What kind of a rehab are you doing then? Are you like icing the next day or the day of? Or
Well, I'll get a lot of swelling, so I have to take.
Oh, okay.
I can't wear my prosthetics, so I'll have to wrap it with Ace Wrap. Get a lot of skin breakdown. It's the same thing as having your hands in a sink for a couple hours where your skin just gets soft.
Right.
And as you're running on that soft skin, it just wears it off. So I get, not necessarily these huge wounds, but a lot of times when I take my leg off, I will be bleeding.
Now, do you sit down throughout the day, like between stages and between resetting and everything?
I never reset. No. I try and reset as little as possible, but actually staying active throughout a match keeps me from hurting. So once I stop moving, and if I sit down for an extended period of time, that's where I get swollen, and that's where most of the damage occurs. So I try and stay as active as possible, and until I absolutely have to sit down and take the leg off. If I take it off during a match, I'm not getting it back on. So
okay.
Yeah.
So then how are you able to do like a full week-long thing like Rocky Mountain where you're in and out of the truck, walking around and shooting stages and, schlepping sandwiches and stuff like that?
Well, Rocky Mountain in itself is its own animal because it's at altitude. Everybody struggles when they go up there. I used to do very well in the mountain environments, but now I'm a little older. I smoke. I'm not the healthiest specimen. So running up and down these mountains takes its toll. So the first couple of days I'm there, I'm actually shooting and burning a whole lot of energy. Well, the next day, by the time the competitors actually show up to shoot, I've acclimatized a little better. So now it's a little easier for me to huff and puff as I'm walking around the stages. In those environments, it's just, you just have to do it. There's, I can take my leg off and some years, a lot of years out there, I mean, people have seen me out there where once the match is over, I take my leg off, and then when I go to pick up score sheets or fix a target or whatever, I hop out of my vehicle on the stage and I hop to where I need to go, or, most of the time I forget my crutches. And that's kind of the situation. And it's just, you got to go big or go home, and I'm chasing perfection, and if my leg hurts, well, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's going to hurt anyway. So
I want to switch gears a little bit here, but kind of build on something that you were talking about earlier, James, and that's getting guys that are in rehab into like an environment where they're with a group of people and they're welcome, and it that kind of struck a chord with me. I was listening to a interview with Sebastian Younger. Are you familiar with him? He's the producer behind Restrepo.
I watched the movie. I think I saw some of the interviews, but I wouldn't know him by name.
Yeah, I didn't either. But the documentary, or I guess it's a documentary, right?
Yes.
It was it's very powerful. If anyone hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. But he wrote a book called Tribe recently, and I heard him talking about it, and he was saying that one of the biggest benefits of therapy-wise is getting people into those welcome environments, and it immediately made me think of Three Gun, because we're in a squad. We go from stage to stage with a group of people on the weekend, and you get to know people and joke around with them and have fun and stuff like that. And then when we go to travel all these matches, we see the same people every time. So it's a pretty cool little community, and it's so I think based on what you're saying there, it's probably a pretty good environment to bring people in, rehab wise for that type of purpose.
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to be part of several different groups that have gone and done all sorts of different activities, whether it's hunting or kayaking, canoeing, all these outdoor recreational things. I went to Vegas with a group where, we walk into a casino and every employee from the casino was there in a welcome line clapping. And it was really overwhelming, but it was nice to be a part of that, but it wasn't my scene. So firearms are loud and they make noise and they're fun to shoot and they're exciting. And what guy coming out of the military or, young guy or young girl in general wouldn't like that excitement? So the shooting community definitely caters to that. Now, a couple other things about the shooting community: they tend to have a little thicker skin than other people in the environment. So, jokes, there's a couple of my shooting buddies that refer to me as Peggy, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Well, I run into other people at matches and they hear somebody refer to me as Peggy and they kind of give a look like, is that okay? Yes, it's okay. It's not the coolest nickname, but that's the one I've got. So, having those guys that will tell a guy honestly if he sucks. There's some guys that I shoot with that are really phenomenal shooters, and every time they come off a stage, everybody there is just clapping and cheering for him and well done and this and that. And even if the guy has a bad stage, they'll tell him that. I get it all the time where I see it from both sides as being a professional shooter at a top level and then being a disabled guy. Where I shoot a stage, if I come off and I have just a stellar run, I can tell that everybody's excited about it because I'm excited about it. And then I come off a stage where I didn't have a good run at all, and people are still congratulating me. I know it might be impressive to some people, but I don't feel good about the performance, and they're saying good job because they see that, hey, I'm a one-legged, one-eyed guy still doing this well on the stage. So I see both sides of it, and it's actually nicer to be in an environment where if I'm messed up, somebody tells me I'm messed up, people will still joke with me. People are more friendly. And I think that's one of the biggest draws to the community for, like I said, veterans and service members in general, is it's a place of like-minded individuals that they feel comfortable with. So it's none of us want someone to just, it's okay if you give me a handshake and say, hey, thanks for what you do. I get that. I do the same thing for other guys, but I don't want somebody to baby me at all. So,
right.
And I know the shooting community doesn't do that. The shooting community is absolutely brutal when it comes to how people feel. Like, the stage itself is going to make you feel really bad about yourself anyway. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, and the scores don't lie either, right? So it's like you make it that, one day of, let's treat James a little bit differently here. But then when you start ending up on the top, then, it's all bets are off and we're going to give you a nickname and we're going to treat you just like one of the other guys. So,
yep.
It's cool to have that competitive environment too, where, you're working against everyone else. But then when you're moving from stage to stage and resetting stuff like that and preparing to shoot and everything, it is kind of like a group effort sort of thing. So you get the best of both worlds in that way, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's a ton of teamwork. I think everybody in the shooting community is under the same blanket where everybody has to pay for the sport one way or another. They're paying for it. Everybody has to travel to it. So you'll start getting these cliques of guys, and they're not individual cliques. They're just groups of guys that are in the same area, and they travel together, and they always squad together. And that camaraderie that's built there, that's exactly what we had in the military. And I still cling to that. One of my biggest regrets ever was leaving the Marine Corps 3-gun team because I don't have my teammates with me anymore. And there's a lot of times now where I'll go shoot a match by myself. I still have friends in the community, but not my group of, my homies, I guess.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you, like, how did you get hooked up with the Marine Corps team, and what was that experience like?
So I was shooting a 3-gun match. I want to say it was probably Rocky Mountain, like 8 years ago or something. I mean, it was 7 or 8 years ago. And the Marine team had just gotten started. I think they went to Superstition that same year. So from February to August, I guess. They had just gotten started. They were shooting Rocky Mountain. I was there, and they found out who I was, and we kind of talked. None of the guys there were competitive shooters. They were all senior instructors from one of the firearms or one of the schoolhouses there in Quantico, and they were just put together as a research team, and their job was to research 3-gun or marksmanship in general.
Huh.
And so when they found out that I was shooting 3-gun and I was doing very well at it already, and that I had experience in multiple disciplines, and I was going through rehab trying to find a unit in the Marine Corps that would accept me and keep me in, they said, well, why don't you come up to Quantico? You know about the program. You're doing good. You have all the contacts. Why don't you come run our program? And so I did. We put a package in with the Marine Corps to stay up in Quantico. It took forever to get that paperwork to go through, like 6 or 8 months. And then I finally transferred up to Virginia. And, I wasn't in charge of the team just because of my rank. I was only a sergeant, and we always had, either a staff sergeant or a gunnery sergeant there, and then either a captain or a Marine gunner in charge of the unit themselves. But I was the guy with all the experience. And so people listened to what I had to say, and not only just, the military always is of the mindset that you can't just show me, you can't just tell me something, you have to show me. So if I should be this good, you should be able to show me that you're that good. And I was able to back up with what I was saying by actually doing it. And for a long time, there was nobody on the team, nobody in the battalion, none of the other instructors that came through that had any of the shooting experience I did. These were all guys that had multiple combat tours and everything else. So not to say that their experiences weren't good, but they just weren't familiar with action shooting. And again, like myself, they were not familiar with the knowledge of ballistics and all things firearms because they didn't need to know all that. They just needed to shoot at the enemy. And since I was, again, hospitalized and I had the time to focus on all that stuff, I became the subject matter expert. So running that team there, we worked specifically on all things marksmanship. Anything that was tested came through us in one way or another. So we were the test platform for the Marine Corps marksmanship programs. We worked with the FBI ballistics lab doing research on all things ballistic. That test for 45 ACP and 9mm. I was there while they were working that for, I think it was total time of 3 years before they released that to the public.
So you were the guy that settled the 45 versus 9mm battle?
I didn't settle it. I was there. So
you were on the team.
The gentleman that worked at the FBI ballistics lab is, a mad scientist when it comes to ballistics, and I think he is the world's leading expert on it. And so going over there and shooting with him all the time and doing live tissue and ballistic gelatin and everything else, we got the information firsthand, and we got to test it. So anything that somebody presented to us as a theory, we would go out and test.
Oh, cool.
And, it really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff because I started reloading when I got into competitive shooting. That changed the way I thought about firearms. And the ballistics changed a whole lot of things. So there's a whole lot of myths that are out in the gun world. And, every time you go to a gun shop, you hear probably 5 of them.
Yeah.
And even now within the 3-gun community, there's all these myths. And there's a ton of skilled shooters out there that take something that works for them, or that I'm not going to say that they luck into, but they find this magic setup of gear and it works well for them for whatever reason. Well, then they put it out as gospel, and all these other people follow behind them. And some people might have good success with it too, but usually the majority of the population doesn't have success with it. because nobody explains to them what they're doing. They just say, okay, you got to have a lighter and faster gun. Well, I mean, there's this whole mechanics to the firearm, and there's, probably hundreds of companies out there that'll argue this, but firearms, in the design of firearms, it's been tested and tested and tested. Well, it seems like over the last 30 or 40 years, companies have just stopped doing research, and they just said, well, this is how everybody does it, so this is what we're going to go with. And we got to just sit there and kind of laugh at all that and actually test stuff out and study it and study it and study it until we found out what actually did what. And that, I guess, made me a better shooter.
That's way cool. So can you give us an example of like a 3-gun myth that you were able to participate in a test on?
Well, 3-gun specifically, compensators. We tested compensators for the Marine Corps and just muzzle devices in general. And this was done, I want to say, early 2010, 2011 time frame. So there are new developments of compensators and muzzle devices out on the market, but everything that was available at that time, we tested. And, and not just put on one firearm that we used, but using true scientific method. 10, you have to have a control in there. And so actually putting 10 different firearms out there and running through malfunctions and manipulations and doing all these things and diagnose, okay, was this a malfunction because of the gun or because of the ammo or because of the magazine? So as you start running through all those things, you actually get that hard data of what actually works. And for years and years and years, even now people are arguing about what's the best compensator out there. And I'm not paid to tell you what the best compensator out there is. As a matter of fact, I use 3 different compensators. One I use because my gunsmith makes them and they work. The second one I use is because the rifle manufacturer I shoot for, he makes them and they work. And the third one I use is because a friend that supported me in the industry years ago, he makes them, and hands down, it was scientifically the best compensator I've ever tested on the market. And as I said, there's probably stuff that's come out since then that, people started looking at those data. Now people are doing lead sleds and they've got all these crazy tests that they come up with, which is good. That people are actually doing that, but that data is actually out there. So I was involved with that, and the reason we did that for the Marine Corps was they were trying to find ways to improve the modern service rifle. Now, is the Marine Corps going to use a true compensator? Probably never, but they started looking at it, and then they started looking at other muzzle devices, sound suppression, flash signature, and everything else. So we took those principles and showed them how they applied. And most of the time, people would come running on our range because they'd hear us rapid firing on targets, and they would think we were shooting full auto, and we were just shooting semi-automatic rifles. And they said, well, there's no way that you can shoot that fast and hit the target that fast. Full auto. And then, I showed this gunner, hey, sir, this is a compensator that we're using. And he stopped yelling at me for a second. He looked at it. And then, 2 days later, he comes back. He's like, all right, show me that compensator again. So
Nice.
So things like that happen. There's a few other, but most of the time it was just developing training techniques. There's a bunch of guys out there in the shooting community that'll tell you that you have to shoot tons and tons of rounds and you just got to go practice. And that's a big myth too, because, if I gave you 1 million rounds and you just went and shot 1 million rounds, you're not going to get any better at all, because you're just going to keep doing the same wrong thing 1 million times over.
Yeah.
So we actually had to, everything with the Marine Corps is dollars and cents. And that's perfect for the civilian market, because I don't want to pay anything for ammo, and I don't want to pay anything for range day and everything else. So when I do go to the range, I want to spend as little money as possible to get the value out of it. So coming up with training programs and training regiments that are really pretty economical for not only myself, but they work for everybody. And, I took everything that I developed there with the Marine Corps, and I put it in this red book, is what I call it. Well, I didn't call it that. Someone else in the Marine Corps did. And they wanted me to put all this other stuff in there and publish it. Well, they wanted the Marine Corps to publish it, and I wouldn't let them do it because that would be dumb. So I might actually release that here sometime in the future if anybody would actually buy it. But
Well, if you need someone to review a copy, I will be happy to read that for you.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah, and that's the thing is, so you did an interview with Patrick Kelly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I was on Three Gun Nation, the pro side, Patrick was doing all the stages, and he'd come walk through and show it for the television audience and kind of break it down to them how guys would run through a stage of fire. And he'd come over and I'd talk to him about running through a stage of fire. And he couldn't believe, one, that I was telling him, one, good information, and two, I was telling the other competition that was there what my game plan was and talking them through their game plans, trying to get the best game plan possible. And some guys couldn't understand why I would share that information. And one, I wanted to validate what I was doing, but two, I didn't want to cheat and beat somebody because I had information that they didn't. I wanted to beat them on their best day, which most of the time I didn't do very well in the Pro Series, but for other reasons. But
Well, so James, the audience is going to pester me if I don't ask you, like, what are those three compensators?
Okay, so the three compensators that I use, I shoot for BPM rifles, and we use the Miklet compensator.
Okay.
It's a very effective compensator. As I adjusted to the compensator, each compensator has its own recoil impulse and different things that it does. So I've adjusted to it. So I use the Miklet compensator because that's the one that comes in the rifles we shoot. Next one that I use is the Rolling Thunder compensator from Triangle Shooting Sports.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to adjust, and you can time it to your gun. It takes 2.5 seconds. Anybody can do it. You don't have to be a gunsmith to tune it. And then the third one, which I believe to actually be the best performing one that I've ever shot, was the Dominator compensator by Firebird Precision.
Okay.
Jim Lambert developed that, and when I got my hands on it, he sent it to us to play with and to test out. He did his own independent testing, which, if you want to listen to somebody else's test, okay, got it. And it would obviously be a little biased if it comes from the manufacturer. So we went out and did our own testing, and true to life, the compensator performed as advertised. But again, that compensator is a little more technical than other compensators. It has a blast baffle in it or a cone that can be replaced and needs to be worked on if you lose things, or if you lose performance with it, can be replaced instead of replacing a whole compensator. And if you go to adjust the compensator and you don't understand how the firearms work, you're not necessarily going to set them correctly. So you can't just buy a compensator off the market, put it on your rifle, and it's going to be the best performing gun or rifle out there. You have to adjust it to your ammunition, to your barrel length, to your gas system, the whole 9 yards. And a lot of people don't do that. So I'm sure people out there have bought really nice compensators and then played with them for about 10 minutes, didn't get the result they wanted because they didn't know what they were doing, and then chucked them in the trash or sold them on Craigslist or whatever.
No, it's a big compensator market on Craigslist.
Well, my brain ain't working. 3-gun.
Oh man, I'm just teasing you. So, okay. So then, for selfish reasons, I have to ask. I just built a rifle, not a 3-gun rifle, but a rifle for myself, and it has an A2 flash hider. Good choice, bad choice?
Well, an A2 flash hider protects your threads at the very least, and it does reduce signature. It will give you some recoil management because there are angles on the compensator which will direct gas. It's not going to give you reduced felt recoil, and it's not going to reduce muzzle rise as much as other stuff out there. So an A2 flash hider is about as basic as they come.
Yeah.
But did you buy it specifically because you wanted to have a certain look on the rifle, or because you were looking for performance? Because
I wanted to hide flash.
Well, there you go. And and realistically, you can actually reduce signature of your flash What length barrel do you have?
It's a 14.5 pinned on there, welded.
Well, with a 14.5-inch barrel, you're going to have, if you're shooting, let's say, green tip or M855 or really any commercial loaded ammo, you're going to have a lot of powder burned after a 14.5-inch barrel. So there's very few things that you can put on the end of that muzzle that are going to completely reduce that signature, minus a can or something of that nature. Just with a short system, you're going to have extra powder burning, and that's going to give you a flash. So the flash hider might mitigate a little bit of it, from certain views, but it's really not going to cut down your signature a whole lot.
Got it. So buy a can. That's what I heard.
Yeah, absolutely. OSS. They work great.
Awesome. Well, James, so going back to the Red Book, without giving away all the secrets, if you were going to design an economical training program for like a mid-level shooter, can you give us sort of some hints on where to start and how to take it from there?
Training wise, the biggest mistake that I see people making with training for 3-gun is they try and practice a 3-gun stage.
Yeah. Okay.
And you will never see the same stage in 3-gun ever, unless you're shooting one of the 3-gun nation classifiers.
Right.
Or something of that nature. And then all you're doing is perfecting that particular stage, and you're not making yourself any better for a real environment where you walk up to a stage, you have 5 minutes to view it, or you might have seen it the day before, but what you want to do for 3-gun is execute the best shot for each target as it presents itself, and map those in a string where you're as fluid as possible all the way from start to finish. So if you practice a stage of fire, you just practice the repetition of going through it, and you're not really training yourself better. So most of my drills for practice are realistically, they're agility type drills with single round counts or very few round counts. You can sit in front of a plate rack and shoot a plate rack all day long, and it really doesn't do a whole lot for you, especially not for 3-gun. But you can have a single piece of steel, and you can shoot it from either side of a barricade 6 times in a row, and you get 10 times the value because you had to practice moving in and out of position, much like you would in 3-gun. So for people that are looking for a better way to practice, start looking at what you do in 3-gun, and just, if people are working on their draw, don't worry about just standing and working on your draw. See how much ground you can cover in the time it takes you to get your gun on target.
That's an interesting one there, and that kind of hits home. I was on the range recently here in Omaha with Lance Dingler, and he pointed out that I was basically holding my pistol in my holster until I was just about to come into the box that we were practicing on getting into and drawing. So instead of coming in with my gun up and ready to shoot, I was coming in on the first part of my draw. So we just took the draw like 3 steps back, and it really helped in that situation. And that's what we do mostly on the clock anyway.
Yep. You in 3-gun, if you're not doing 2 things, you're wrong. Usually when you get to the end of the stage and people are looking around, they're like, okay, I should be doing something here. What do I need to be doing? So that's kind of what you look at is, the economy of motion through a stage. If you have to reload, it's preferred that you do it while moving to the next position instead of just running over there, shooting, and then having to do a flat-footed reload. So that stage prep and that stage planning will help mitigate those issues of running the gun dry. But the practice for going through a stage, when people look at a stage of fire, they usually say, well, this paper target's 50 yards away. I either have to run up to it or I have to use my rifle. And that automatically determines how they shoot their stage, instead of saying, well, at the draw, it's going to take me 1.8 seconds to draw for this 50-yard target, 1.8 seconds to the first shot anyway. So in 1.8 seconds, I can take 2 steps closer. It might not necessarily make the shot any easier, but as soon as you're done with that shot at 1.8 seconds, now you're 2 steps closer to where you need to be for the next position. So just mapping those things out and combining them will end up making everybody's life easier. So usually people go into a stage of fire and they've only practiced a few things, so that's what they do, and they can't make up any time on a stage because they're practicing the same, or they're actually doing the same stuff that they practiced, and they're just trying to go faster doing it, and it doesn't work.
So when you set up drills for yourself on the range, you mentioned that, there's a lot of value in having one target and a barricade. Is most of your stuff dealing with shooting around barricades, getting into position, or do you work on transitions as well?
I work on gun transitions a whole lot,
right,
because there's a time that needs to be done there. There's a certain way to be smooth with it. And a lot of people waste time on transitions, or they waste time by giving themselves an additional transition. So I practice it to make sure that I know for certain what that time is going to be. If I have to transition on the move from one gun to the next, and people just think, oh, I'll just drop the shotgun here, pick up the pistol, and move on instead of loading the shotgun, or vice versa. It might sound like it's going to take a second and a half to do. In reality, it might take them 4.5 seconds just to get rid of one gun. And you could probably load your pistol or load a shotgun in 4 seconds. Everybody's doing these quad loads now. Oh, quad loads, that's another thing too. I'm sure you're familiar with all these videos where guys are sitting in their basement and they post a video and it looks like they've been sweating for hours and hours and hours. Their thumbs are bleeding as they do these reloads. And they're like, I've got my 12-round reload down to 0.9 seconds or something.
Right.
Now you try it. Well, I don't try it. And the reason being, I will never have 6 hours in my basement. I don't even have a basement, but 6 hours on the range in a stage of fire to practice that reload before I go shoot. I do practice reloading, but not for that amount of time. And usually the time that I set for a reload, as it is concerned for stage planning, is if I went and picked up the shotgun right now and went to load 8 shells, that's how fast I plan on doing it in a stage.
So like that cold reload rather than being all warmed up from an hour of practice.
Yeah, and you might have time in the safe area to go hit a couple of reloads, or in your truck if you feel safe shooting in your truck or whatever. But it's just not realistic, and for people to put these unrealistic expectations when they're shooting, that's where it becomes an issue. And that's why I try and keep my training as simple as possible. I know that the majority of my time lost in a stage, most of where I struggle on a stage, is physical movement, agility drills and everything else. And that's pretty common for a lot of people. There are very few guys that are just these studs on the shooting circuit. Now, there's a couple of guys that are in really good shape, a couple of ladies that are in good shape, and they don't necessarily have to work a whole lot on their movements throughout a stage of fire, because they're just, whether they're 50 years old or 20 years old, they're just in good shape. But for the rest of us, we're not in good shape, so that's where we give up a whole lot of time. So I try and work on that more. And, you talked about the barricades. As far as shooting around a barricade or shooting, it's very rare that you go to a match where you get this picture-perfect shooting position to shoot from. If you have the opportunity, yeah, take it. But for the most part, you're shooting off a flimsy little pine tree branch, or you're shooting under a ladder, or you're holding a bucket on your head, shooting one-handed under a car or something. I'm just all these crazy positions. And, people are like, oh, I'll just whip down here under the ladder and shoot real quick. And they never experiment with these crazy positions. I'm not saying you have to do all that, but they don't dedicate the right amount of time for that shot. And then they just sit there and struggle and struggle and struggle. And it might only be, a 20-yard shot with a pistol, or, relatively easy shots. And so they look at it as a 100-yard shot with a rifle, and they don't dedicate the right time for it, because it's just something they've never experienced or never thought about. They just think, oh, I got to have a sweet-looking rifle and a cart, and that's all I need for 3 gun. I'm dogging on a lot of people here right now, I know.
Oh, man. I'm laughing because the carts, like, I got a buddy that he said, I've got 2 kids and they're grown now, so no more carts for me.
Yep.
carries his rifles. So, James, when you're talking about doing plyometrics and agility drills and stuff like that, it sounds like it's kind of some stuff that can be done off the range. Do you have like a dedicated dry fire practice for that type of stuff as well?
Yes and no. I mean, everything that I do, whether I'm driving in the car and dry firing at highway signs that I drive by, not with a gun in my hand, but just, looking at the sign go by and just pressing my finger against my thumb and saying bang, I'm just constantly telling myself, practicing dry fire. I do the same thing with agility type drills. My wife and kids, there's 19 kids in the house, so anytime I'm walking through the house, I can't walk in a straight line when I'm going from point A to point B. So when one of the kids are there, or the dog, or one of the cats or something, I have to do this quick little sidestep, and in my mind, I instantly hit the buzzer, and I'm shuffling through some barricades in a shoot house or something. And it's ridiculous to think that way, but the mentality is that everything I do is aggressive movements, and not overly aggressive movements, but it's controlled aggression. I need to tell my body, hey, I need to sidestep this fast, or, telling my body I need to sidestep 9 inches or else I'm going to miss the port where I'm in position. So just practicing those little things makes a huge difference, because I don't get to go to the range every day. Actually, over the last few months, I've been on the range very little. My buddy down the road from me has his own property with a shooting range on it, and I've probably shot out there a dozen times this past year, and it's mainly sighting in guns. So very little actual trigger time on the range in that sense, just because it takes a whole lot of time and energy, and whether people are working or doing other things. So if I know I can't be on the range 5 days a week, I got to get that training in somewhere else. And like I said, the community full of doctors and lawyers and school teachers, they're doing other stuff during the day. Well, if a doctor is walking down the hall and he does a little sidestep real quick, no one's going to think, oh my God, this guy's training for a 3-gun match, and freak out. But if he shows up in his office with a chest rig trying to reload shotgun, they might freak out about that. So, that one's on the house. Don't bring your shotgun to the doctor's office.
Gotcha.
Unless you're Dylan Easley and you own your own office or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny that you actually mentioned that, because I was at Dylan Easley's office, and he's a practicer. Yep. So James, other than dodging kids as you're walking down the hall, what else does like your personal practice regimen look like?
Most of the time I focus on several things. So it's, again, low round count drills with pistol, just making sure that I get the gun into place as quick as possible. Really, it's focused on entry and exit movement, which a lot of guys work on, and those quick agilities. So be able to control my breathing after, a pretty aggressive amount of movement, 15 seconds of really explosive movement, and be able to put sights on target where I want and control the shot. That I do quite a bit. And then the rest of the time, rifles win matches. And, my rifle skills over the past few years have kind of declined because I've gotten sloppy with my shooting. So I've tried to go back to ensuring that my data on my rifle is 100% spot on. So I use flashcards that I've made, because I don't get to go out and shoot long range rifle all the time. So I just made these flashcards with different ballistic holds in them, and tried to reference as close as I could to the size of the target, but saying, okay, if this target's 220 yards, this is where my sight needs to be, because I'm always looking at one reference point in the optic to shoot long range. And I want to be able to look at that very quickly and be able to see what I'm supposed to see on target. So I made these flashcards, and now I've probably got 30 or 40 of them. I probably could make more if I really wanted to, but I don't have even increments on yard lines. It's like 220 yards, 270 yards, 310 yards, just these random yardages. And I just, the the yard line is on the back of the card, and I look at it, the number of the card, and trying to get my brain to snap that image very quickly, and I just flip it over to confirm that that's where my hole needs to be.
Okay, so on the flip side, then you have like your reticle drawn on there with what the target, target size and where it should be when you're looking at that specific hold.
Yeah, and
okay,
and it's just a representation of where your impact should be. So I don't think there's any optic on the planet now that you can't print the reticle offline. I shoot the Leupold Mark 6 with the CMRW 556 reticle, which is super fast to read. And, just go on Google and Google the image of the reticle, print it out, 30 times or whatever it is. And then, I just pick a yardage and map it out. And then just, according to my ballistic data, draw a little dot, where the impact should be. And then just put a target below that, behind that, as far as saying, hey, if I'm shooting a 300-yard target, I'm putting this dot here, the center reticle, I'm putting it center of the target. That's where my impact should be. Or I'm putting it center dot at the top of the plate or middle of the plate if I'm using different holds and stuff like that. So makes it very fast to program. And then when I jump down behind an optic, my stage planning, I just write the targets in the order that I engage them on my hand. And, I just sit there and walk around for 5 minutes just talking myself through the phone number of my yard lines. And so when I get down behind the gun, I just say 210, 270, 350, 415, and I'm off the stage. It's about how fast my brain processes it. It doesn't happen that fast. Obviously, I still have to execute in there, but.
That is an amazing tip. that you did right there, the flashcards. I haven't heard, this is 94 shows, James, and I haven't heard anyone mention that. That's huge. If you're listening to this and you don't have flashcards in your own reticle by this time next week, you are wrong.
It's amazing. Like I said, I've been shooting competitively since 2006, and maybe it's because I haven't been considered a subject matter expert up until the last few years, but everyone that I shoot with, the last 2 or 3 years, aside from maybe a handful of matches, I've been top 5 at every match I've shot, every major match in my division. And that's, I'm not trying to brag on myself, but there is a really deep talent pool, and to be at that level consistently, it says something about it. So I respect the guys that I'm competing against, and I would hope they would respect me. So when we go on a stage of fire, and I tell the guys around me straight up, this is how I'm shooting the stage. Or they ask me, what are you doing this? And I tell them, I'll sit there and tell them for 20 minutes, I'll give them the exact definition of what I'm doing. And they still aren't putting the time and effort into it. And I'm not saying everybody's not doing that. But some guys, you have to tell them time and time again. I mean, my own teammates there with the Marine Corps, I had to play mother hen and follow around behind the guys. Hey, make sure you're doing this. Make sure you're doing that. And, some guys pick up on it very quickly. Some guys just choose not to, or they get so wrapped around the axle about other things that they forget about it. But this is definitely another freebie, and I'm surprised that more people aren't helping each other, because in all honesty, you can go to a 3-gun match this weekend and leave all your gear at home. I mean, literally, don't bring anything, and you'll still be able to shoot the match. I can promise you. Someone there will, hey, we don't have everything, but, we'll get you replace the ammo next week. You can shoot my gear. I mean, I've seen it time and time again. Matter of fact, there was a guy I shot with down in Corpus. I don't know if he's shooting anymore, but he was an insurance adjuster, and he gave his own personal 3-gun rig to 2 brothers that were, one was like 21 and the other was 19. They came out to shoot. They didn't have a shotgun that was working. Their pistol was junk. I mean, they had guns, but it wasn't a very good setup. And this guy gave him his personal 3-gun setup and said, all right, we'll see you next month. And I said, Merlin, do you think these guys are ever going to show up again? He said, I don't know, but if they do, they have guns.
Wow.
That might be a small percentage scenario, but people in this community really do help each other out. And I don't see why more people aren't helping each other out when it comes to stage planning and now some guys are, like when you get to certain disciplines like Bianchi and Steel Challenge, everybody knows what everybody's doing. Now they might do some things behind the scenes as far as their practice regimen that they don't want to share with other people, but really when it comes down to how people are negotiating stages of fire and everything else, everybody should be sharing that info, especially when the majority of people nowadays that I see at matches, they're not repeat customers. They're new customers. They're new shooters. And if I just beat the bricks off some guy the first day he's out at a match and I don't talk to him and I don't help him, he's not going to feel welcome. He's not going to feel good about his performance, and he's probably not going to come back.
Yeah. Well, and what harm does it do to tell like a guy that's going to shoot, 55% of the overall match score, your exact stage plan so he can shoot 62% of the overall match score, and you'll still be, top 5, top 10, who cares? At that point, it just makes him have a better match.
Yeah. I'm not very good looking. I'm not very good shooting, so I definitely don't want to be known as a jerk.
Gotta have personality.
Yeah. That's how I got my wife, I guess.
Nice. That's why I always say my brother doesn't have a sense of humor, but now he kind of does. So, but anyway, so James, I got to get on one of your squads sometime this year, then, and learn from you. See what your stage plans look like. This sounds like a really cool thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and it helps me more than it helps other people because I'm constantly trying to develop training and bouncing ideas off people. And if I can't articulate to everybody the same thing, if I say it and some people don't understand, it gives me a chance to refine my teaching methods and, educate them very quickly. And I don't get to help everybody. I don't think there's anybody I haven't helped, but, it makes me better in doing so. So, I enjoy doing it.
It's an excellent point. When you have to explain something to someone, it really makes you stop and think about like the very mechanics of what you're doing. And also then, if they ask a why, then you have to, sort of justify your stage plan and your reasoning for that.
Yeah. And, I see this a lot with military and law enforcement guys. Those men in general have ego, and it's very hard for a guy, when he's shooting a match, if he's a new shooter or he's just having a tough time, for him to go over to another shooter and say, "Hey man, I'm terrible. Can you please help me?" And so I'm sure everybody's been on that squad with that one guy or gal, whoever they are, that just doesn't slow down on the trigger and can't hit one piece of steel. And they're just freaking out, and you can tell they come off of the stage super discouraged. And everybody knows this guy's in a bad mood, so they just leave him alone. Well, I go, right as soon as I can, let him put his gear down, catch his breath, but go over to him and say, "Hey, this is what you're doing. You mind if I give you some advice or help you out here? I'm not trying to beat you down, but, it's very simple. We're all seeing it from an outside perspective. I'm just going to be the one to help you out and tell you, if you want it, take it. If you don't want it." And I've never had anybody that runs me off from trying to help them.
Oh, yeah.
Now, on the training side of the house, when you train military and law enforcement guys or men in general, they're less likely to ask for your help in the beginning. So they won't even, the guys that don't want the help probably won't even show up for a class anyway. Those are the same guys that probably won't come out to a match. So, if you've got a buddy that, if you're trying to bring him out to the range, he says, "Well, I'm busy," and he's just always giving you an excuse, even though he's not really doing anything. That's ego. And so you got to find a way to get around that ego. And, I think I think it might just be because people feel bad for me when they listen to me, because I'm not the alpha male that comes up trying to impose myself on people like, "Oh, look, man, I'm better than you." It's like, hey, no, we all suck and we have all started somewhere. You want to join us on the enlightened side of the house that just dropped our egos and said, "Hey, help me." And it usually works. So, I feel real good about that. uh, there might be someone out there that thinks I'm stupid or whatever, and they just haven't told me yet. But
Well, James, I like that concept, and helping out the newer and the mid-level shooters is a great way to keep everyone in the sport and keep us all progressing. So you probably see a lot of those guys on the range, especially running or helping out at Rocky Mountain 3-gun and all that. What's like the most common mistake that you see these folks make, and how would you recommend they correct it?
That's a tough one because
It's pretty broad.
I do see a lot of mistakes, but usually the biggest one is people don't know their ability level, so they try and shoot outside of their ability level. I actually started out this way, and there are advantages to it. So if you get a chance to shoot with the super squad, for example, when I started out in USPSA, I would try and squad with as many masters and GM level shooters as I could because I wanted to see what they were doing, and I tried to emulate that. Now, I realized very quickly that I couldn't maintain that speed, so I'd start breaking it down. Okay, this is what I need to do. This is what it looks like. So how can I get to that point? But a lot of people will see somebody run through a stage in 3-gun, and let's say they set the stage time, just for the squad is 30 seconds. Well, the next guy behind him, feeling a little pressure is like, well, I got to beat 30 seconds, so I'm going to go a little faster here, and that guy might be a better shooter, and he just rushes himself, so he gives up a couple of extra misses here and there, and then he, in essence, gives away the stage to a lesser talented shooter. That sounds kind of a mean thing, but he really does give up the stage win or the stage time to somebody with less skill than him just because he tried to shoot out of his ability level. So people really need to slow down and make sure that what they're doing is the ability that they can achieve. I miss a lot. I try not to miss a lot, but I don't want to go through a stage. If I have a 3 or 5% miss ratio in the stage of fire, I find that to be acceptable. You're gonna have a reasonable degree of misses, but I don't want to have to fire 2 shots for every target to hit it. I want to be as close to 100% hit ratio as possible. And usually the people that have a really good hit ratio they might not be the fastest going through the stage every time, but they're going to be very consistent. And if you look at any major match over the last 10 years, pull the top 10 guys out of the match and look at their stage performances, whether it's time percentage or points, or however you want to break it down. But very few of those guys will just win every stage. Most of them will just shoot right at the 90 to 95 percentile of the pack. So they don't have to win every stage, they just have to shoot consistently. And then they'll have a guy who, might be 11th through 20th place, and he's got 3 stage wins, but then on the opposite side, he's just trashed 3 or 4 stages. And I see it all the time. So it's just a matter of telling people, you're not going to break any land speed records here, especially as a newer shooter. So just shoot your game plan and shoot it well, execute it well, and you'll end up doing better than you think. So don't let the time fool you. Figure out where you need to be in that time.
So when you see someone that has like 3 stage wins and then 3 train wrecks, is that someone that's like shooting beyond their ability, or they're just trying too hard? They're pushing 100% or what?
Yeah, the guys that go for broke all the time. I've been there. Where you know that you have to crush a stage, or you want to crush a stage anyway, and you just let extra shots go. But there has to be that tipping point where, okay, I tried to rush around the corner and break a shot at this 50-yard gong, and you end up jerking back around the wall, and you have to come back and forth a few times to settle on the target. How many times you can do that in a row before you just stop, resettle your sights, take the shot, and move on?
Right.
So the guys that I see doing that, it really blows my mind, because I'm not going to call anyone out on this, but there's a ton of top level shooters and guys that have titles and that have, either master or GM style rankings, or the professionals or whatever they want to call themselves, that constantly do this at multiple matches. And, the thing that makes it even worse is when they get done with a stage or when they get done with a match, they'll come off and they won't accept responsibility for it. They'll say, oh, this piece of gear or this situation cost me. It wasn't the situation or your gear that cost you. There are very few mechanical malfunctions that really hurt people in matches. It's usually somebody just doesn't have the patience to do what they're supposed to. And I know everybody's trying to chase that trophy and trying to chase that big check or whatever they're doing. But going for broke doesn't win. You really go broke.
It's a good point. It's right there in the name.
Yep.
Well, I like that. I like that philosophy, James. We've been talking quite a while here, and the time has kind of gotten away from me because I've been enjoying this so much. So I'm going to work toward wrapping up. And there's a couple questions I always ask all of my guests. First is kind of a light one. Can you tell me about your most spectacular disqualification?
I have never actually been disqualified from a match.
That's an easy one then. Where do you see the sport of three-gun headed?
You've got two. I think we've hit a point where you have two distinct crowds of three-gun. You have the Bay style three-gun nation type crowds, which it's fast and it's fun. It's its own skill. And then you have the outlaw three-gun, which are, I believe, more rifle-based matches. And some people don't want to shoot these bigger stages of fire because they're more physical, or I don't know why people do it. But, when you had that merge in the road there, I think they're eventually going to come back to each other because, I still dance back and forth between other disciplines. USPSA I use as a skill builder. I don't shoot any major USPSA matches anymore. I try to, but usually there's a big three-gun match. But you can't be good without across the board without messing with different disciplines. So I do think that there will be a communal joining of the three-gun community. Now, do I think it's going to fall under one name or one blanket? No, I just consider it to be action three-gun. But I definitely see with the new generation of younger and younger shooters coming in, and younger shooters with good talent and a good coaching base around them. I don't know if it'll go anything to be Olympic or anything like that, but I do see it going international. And I do think it's growing. I don't know if it's growing as fast as everybody wants it to, but my kids are going to do it. So there's another 6 people in the crowd there.
Sweet. Well, if everyone just has 6 kids and then they have 6 kids.
Yeah.
Well, James, you mentioned coaching. Do you ever see like a setup like we see for, I don't know, like gymnastics or something like that, where there's like dedicated coaches with like a set of, 3 or 4 juniors below them that they're bringing up?
Yeah, I know there's a few guys out there already that have already taken specific shooters under their wing and started coaching them up. You mentioned Lance Stingler earlier in the show. I believe he's working with Nate
Staskowitz.
There you go. And whether it's just their friends or whatever, however it works out, there's going to be a bunch of talent coming up, and there's going to be some good coaches that have a hand in developing them. I personally would like to see more of these, not talent agencies, but gyms, I guess, coming up with shooters, performance gyms. And myself, I'm working on one now. That's what I try and do, is train people for the coaching aspect. It's harder to find people in there that want a dedicated coach, as much time as they need. They just want to go to one class and have all their problems answered. It doesn't work like that.
That's for
but
sure.
I think more and more people, especially as the generations get older and older, some of these guys, I'm only 31, but at some point I might hit a plateau, or physically I might not be able to do it anymore. At some point I may not be able to shoot as good anymore. And realistically, I find more enjoyment in making other people skilled shooters or educating them on being skilled shooters. So I know for a fact that there's going to be a ton of these groups popping up. and they should, because it's teaching safety and discipline. I don't think there's any difference in 3-gun and karate or any other youth activity, except for the fact that they're playing with firearms. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If a kid can feed and be responsible for the life of, a $15,000 steer, why can't he handle a shotgun?
Yeah. Well, and it is literally a martial art, right? I mean, that's absolutely like the gestation or the origins of practical shooting is a martial art. So,
correct.
Well, James, I like that. I like that idea. I like the concept of having like a dedicated coach and like a gym you would go to. I think that's a really cool concept. So, last question. I've had a lot of fun here. If you could leave the audience with just one thought or one piece of advice, what would it be?
No matter what your situation or scenario is, don't make excuses. And I don't know if that specific term has been coined or not, but I don't make any excuses for what I do or I can't do. There's a bunch of guys out there that are in the same blanket where they just don't make an excuse, and nothing in this world makes me angrier than hearing people complain about their situation. You 100% are in control of how you shoot, how your life is. So you choose your level of happiness and your level of performance. It's not my fault. It's not the fault of anyone except yourself. So, if you want to get good, you need to make yourself good. And that's it.
I love it, James. That's a great final thought, and hopefully the audience has, identified with you along the way here, and they're going to choose to make themselves better, choose to have a happier life and everything. James, this has been a ton of fun, man. I really enjoyed getting to know you here, and I really thank you for sharing your experience and your story and your time as well with the audience. And thanks for being on the 3-Gun Show.
Well, thank you for having me. This was very enjoyable.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with James Gill. Man, I could have talked to James all night. He has thought so much about the technical aspects of 3-Gun that listening to his lessons could save you years of trial and error. And his final thought is something that all of us can take to heart. I'm definitely going to have James back on the show in the future, so if you want to suggest a topic, go ahead and comment on this post on the blog at 3gunshow.com/episode 94. If you want to support the show, you can do so by using our affiliate link when you shop at Brownells. Just go to 3gunshow.com/Brownells and shop like normal. We earn a small commission on what you buy at no additional cost to you, and helps keep things running over here. If you like the 3-Gun Show, please tell a friend about the podcast. If you see new shooters at your local match, tell them too. You will be their hero for sharing this resource. Let's grow this thing, and let's do it together. Show someone how to subscribe in iTunes, in Stitcher, Google Play, etc., and how to leave a review. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.